Welcome to Wednesday night worship. I'm out here, yes, in the rain, going for a walk. One of the things that you may not know about me is I love to walk in cemeteries of all places. I don't usually tell people that a lot because people will say to me, "That's weird, you walk in cemeteries?" I do. And they think, well, why do you do that? Cemeteries are places of death. But to me, they're not. Yes, cemeteries are full of gravestones, and each of those marks a place where someone you love is buried. That's true. But for me, when I look at cemeteries, I see these as places of hope and places that are very peaceful and places that remind me of life. In fact, all around you in cemeteries, you see images like this one, an image of a cross that reminds me and a whole lot of other people, a whole lot of families, of the words of God that promise us that where God is concerned, death is never the final word, but the last word in our lives is always life. That's why I like cemeteries. I can walk around and gain that perspective that there's life. God's word is always life. Did you know that there were no cemeteries in this country before the year 1831? People have always buried their dead, of course, but it's just that they didn't bury them in graveyards. But with the construction of Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the cemetery movement was born. Now there are cemeteries literally everywhere. Thousands and thousands of cemeteries. In the time of Jesus, people buried their loved ones in tombs that were often carved out of the side of mountains or hills or in caves. That was the situation when Jesus went to the tomb of Lazarus one day. Lazarus had died 4 days earlier, and his body had been put in a cave-like tomb with a huge stone rolled in front of the door to keep robbers out. Mary, the sister of Lazarus, scolded Jesus. "If only you had been here a few days ago, you could have kept our brother from dying." That's when Jesus did one of the most astounding things ever. The stone was rolled away, and Jesus called Lazarus out of the tomb. To the amazement of everyone, Lazarus came out alive. Can you even imagine that? Before he did that, he said these amazing words to Mary and Martha. "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live." It's those words that give me hope when I walk through places like this. Words that are just as powerful now as they were 2,000 years ago when Jesus first spoke them. This past week, we asked members of our congregation to reflect on their own personal journey with those words of Jesus. We had one very brave soul take us up on the challenge, Alan Scary, and his story is a very powerful one. Let's listen to what he had to say.
When Jesus said that I am the resurrection and the life, that really had special meaning to me in the year of 1996. During that year, we lost two family members. We lost my mother-in-law, who's Karen's mom, and shortly after that, we lost my dad. And that time was a very significant time in my life, and I would like to comment about it. My mother-in-law was a very, very Christian lady, very special lady. I couldn't ask for a better mother-in-law. Our kids loved her. They enjoyed going to Grandma and Grandpa's house. In fact, later on, when our kids got married, two of our granddaughters are named after, middle names are named after her. So she was a special person. And my dad, he's a World War II veteran, and he worked hard to provide family, support our family, me and my brothers. And there's a reason they were called the greatest generation, I think. But anyway, they both were in declining health in that year, 1996. My mother-in-law was dying of cancer, and my dad was in a rest home dealing with Parkinson's disease and dementia. When the time came that my mother-in-law was close to death because she was in hospice care at that time, at home. We as a family decided to go say our final goodbyes to her. And so we arrived, and one by one our kids said their goodbyes to their grandma. Then it was my turn, and I will remember that for the rest of my life, the conversation we had with her, that I had with her. I first thanked her for being a great mom, mother-in-law, and then I made a comment, and she followed that comment with a profound statement. I said, you know, it's not going to be long until you're going to see Jesus face to face. And then she said, I know I will. And then she followed that with a statement that I'll remember forever. She said, when I see Jesus, I'm going to ask Jesus to take care of my dad, whose name was John Scarry. And so after we said our goodbyes, we left. I didn't think too much about it. But it did strike me that she was not thinking of herself at that time, was thinking of others. She passed away about a week later. And then the following day or the day after, my mom called and says, you need to get down to see your dad. Then it hit me. Could it be that she did exactly what she said she would do? So I asked my mom, when did my dad go into a coma? Because that's preceded his death. He went into a coma. And she gave the time, and that time was right after my mother-in-law passed away. That hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'll remember that forever. And I to this day believe that she was resurrected and had a new life. And she thought of my dad, and my dad now has a new life, because when she asked Jesus to take care of my dad, I believe that Jesus said, it's time to bring him home. So that is my story. And I really believe that we are in a resurrection and a life even before death, but even after death. This is my story. God bless you on this Lenten season.
Well, thanks again for being with us for this Wednesday night worship service. We hope that you will be able to join us again next week for the last in this series of worship services on the I Am sayings of Jesus. Next week, we focus on his words, I am the true vine. But for tonight, we just remember Jesus' words that nothing can ever keep us from the promises and the love of God, not even death. I'm off to continue my walk. See you next week.